2022 elections are just 2 years away. Right. So policy-wise, what might you recommend after conducting these studies in 2016, 2019? How can people deal with this information in terms of politics?
So if our main findings are that there's a greater shift from traditional to social media, and then there's more innovations in social media, what we're actually advocating for is a shift from content regulation to process regulation. Right. I mean, even our interviewees or our informants are saying that they're good with the Facebook takedowns. That's fine with them. It's their way of removing the unethical players, but that's not enough. So when you look at a process-regulated approach, you're shifting the focus from what types of speech are allowed in public spheres to how can we make all of these more transparent, more accountable, because that's really the less dangerous way of doing it.
For example, the influencers that you mentioned, as far as you know, were the expenses and the transactions something that was monitored, let's say, by the Comelec, or is it even monitorable?
Exactly. So if we look at the sources, the statements of contributions from the from campaign expenditures from the senators or
all the candidates,
they're not monitoring everything. They're only allowed, or they're only required to sign in on their official pages. But what about the support pages that stem off from that? It's not regulated.
Even the expenses, so mahirap i-trace yung expenses.
So what can be done and who can do it? Who can regulate?
We're saying that it should be a collaborative effort between civil society, the academics, and then the government, and the PR firms inside. For example, we have this entire association of PR firms. And they're not being tapped, or they're not being regulated, or they're not being...
And they don't report their revenues for campaigns,
exactly.
right?
So
but isn't the, I mean, for example, with media, traditional media, they try to regulate because malinaw yung point of sale.
Yes,
it's the networks and the publishers.
Spot.
But in social media, the point of sale is the platform. It's Facebook, it's Twitter. It's not the PR agencies. Do you think it's viable and possible to have a conversation with the platforms and say that the transactions at your platform has to be transparent, especially during the times of elections?
Yes, definitely. I think it's possible, and I think some platforms are actually moving towards that direction, but they need to be engaged some more. For example, Facebook has taken down 200-something pages, and that's welcome, but that's not enough because that's a slippery slope. Who gets to decide what kinds of speech are...
Sabagay, the transactions are not necessarily online. Diba? You can pay me cash, and then I post, and then... And
in this political climate, it's easy to provide that chilling effect to anyone.
That's why. So the question is, can it be done at all?
Well, we're saying that it can, and we're saying that there can be frameworks for it. For example, the U.S. Responsible Ads Act, I think that's the name, is something that we can look into. And recently, Tito Soto passed, or is trying to recommend the Singapore version bill.
How does it work?
For Tito Soto's bill, although we're not advocating for that, because it's more dangerous.
Whether it's US or Singapore, how does it work?
It's actually a really more collaborative effort between the civil society, academe, and the government of fact-checking everything and making everything more transparent. So, for example, if we have a money trail, we can see where the candidates are spending their campaign money. And if we can see where they're spending, we can see what the outcomes of these expenditures are. And if these expenditures lead to disinformation, why are we allowing it?
But these are not significant. I mean, I suppose these are not amounts that are huge compared to mainstream media advertising. So it's easy to fall under the radar or below the radar.
Actually, one of our findings is that it's receiving a big amount of the war chest now. For example, some of the campaign managers that we're talking to, the PR advisors that we're talking to, and even other groups that are checking, are saying that it can reach from 30% of the total air budget, the total media budget, to 50% of the total.
50%?
Wow.
So that's the attention that
you're talking about the air war? You're talking about the 50% of the air war?
Of the entire media budget.
Of the media budget. Or just social media?
Media budget. So 50% of the media budget.
Of the media budget.
No, but a large chunk of that will probably be media, TV.
No, so
but 50% goes to social.
Whereas in 2016, it wasn't anywhere near that figure.
That's big, kasi if presidential candidates would spend 400 million for their campaign,
Some
easily
even 1
that's
billion.
half of that.
And as we
goes
said
to
earlier, it's
social media.
actually cheaper. So for example, 1 million can go a long way in
Yeah.
social media when you compare it to
Yes.
TV ads.
But there are also concerns that trying to regulate these micro and nano bloggers will impinge on freedom of
Freedom.
expression.
Yes.
So
Or
that's why.
is that a valid concern as far as you're concerned?
Yes, that's why
Yeah.
part of the report is that we want to see that this effort has a legal soft touch because we don't
Yeah.
want to endanger free
Yes.
speech.